For Gardens, this is a light Euro game, I would say in the same category as Ticket to Rides or Carcassonne in terms of complexity, so one of those intro Euro games in which players will be building gardens. They'll be collecting resources and trading them to certain advantages. And again, the theme is gardens, and without further ado, I just can't wait to show you this really impressive game component that gameplay revolves around. This 4-layer pagoda with layers that, wait for it, spin around, and during the game you will indeed move them to achieve different patterns, to create different patterns that will give you different things. And at first I feared that the pagoda, as visually and physically impressive as it is, may be a gimmick, but it's really not. You will spend quite a bit of time thinking about the pagoda and how to turn different layers and play different cards in specific ways to achieve your objectives. So the pagoda is built during setup, and then don't worry, you break it down easily. It can be easily broken down into 4 sections for storage, and again, it's also very easy to build back. So you build it during setup, and then each player needs to set up to sit exactly, to sit, you can stand, it's fine, but you need to be exactly placed in front of one of the sides, so it should always be clear which side of the pagoda you're facing, because that will tell you which resources you're collecting during certain actions of the game. And so suppose that you and I, right now, we're a team and we're sitting right here. This is the side that applies to us, the one right now with 3 wood, 1 water, 0 rocks, and 1 grass up there. So we have a scoring board with four tracks. Each player has a color. The colors are yellow, white, black, and gray. And each player places one marker of their color on each of the 4 tracks. Basically, during the game, you're trying to complete sections of the gardens with specific icons. So if I complete this section here, I get to advance my mark on the purple track. If I complete this section here, I get to advance my score marker on the yellow track. Here's an interesting plot twist. When you get to the end of a track and you are able to complete a section, so to get the corresponding advancement, instead of advancing, you're already at the top, you push back the markers of the opponents on that track. And it's entirely possible to kick them out of the track entirely, in which case they cannot score in the category. No matter how many sections they complete later, once you're kicked out of a category on a track, you cannot go back. And so on one hand, you look at the graphics and there's a beautiful, peaceful, placid landscape, very zen, but it can have some slightly, or not so slightly, cutthroat moments when you're trying to complete a specific section to kick out a player from that track. Each player has this very important tile here, which is where you place your resources. The resources are represented by these nice thematic tokens that represent the same resources that you saw on the pagoda: grass, wood, rock, and water. We hit the pagoda. And when you collect them using actions, as we will see, you place them here. And that's not much. That's all that you have. When that is filled, then you will need to take action specifically to clean it up. The fact that you have a limited amount of resources that you can store, and that limits also what you can collect, has a huge impact on the game. Now, finally, we get to talk about these cards more specifically. These cards are double-sided. On one side, the back, you see what they represent once you actually build them. They're divided into gardens. So you got the blue garden, the green, the purple, and the orange. And each has a number of cards in it. And so the dot that is the biggest tells you where that card is positioned within that panorama. So this one is all the way to the left. This one is all the way to the right. This one is the second to the left, and so on and so forth. So if I were to build them, I would place them in my play area like so. As you can see, they they sort of form a panorama. The image doesn't always match perfectly, as you maybe can even see here. It looks like, am I seeing double? Looks like it was maybe meant to be this way. But the idea is that, in any case, for game purposes, you cannot develop, you cannot build two cards that represent the same location in the same garden. I cannot build another garden card that is blue and has the big dot all the way to the left if I already built one that has that same pattern up there, because there are multiple cards for each section of the garden. So for example, I would not be able to build both that card and that card. But again, this is when they're built, so we need to build them first. This other side of the card represents different things that you can do. When you play a card, you can play it in your play area, and that represents simply the groundwork, the work in progress that you are building. And these are the resources that you need to collect to complete the card and turn it to the other side. When you have the correct resources, simply return it to the supply, and then you build that card. Good for you. Now you have a hand of 5 cards. Each turn you must take 3 actions, and each action will be performed by playing a card. So it's very easy also to keep track of how many actions you still have, because you always start your turn with 5 cards and you always end your turn with 2 cards. At that point you draw back to 5, and that ends your turn. So you can spend an action and a card simply by placing it face up in your play area. You can only have a certain number of cards total. You can, again, we cannot have doubles, so that is the same pattern and the same big dot. For an action, you can, instead of placing a card, I suppose that I'm working on these two at the present time. For another action, instead of laying a groundwork, I can, if a card has this icon here in this area, I can discard it to collect a wild. Then simply by discarding this card and spending an action, I can collect a wild resource among the ones that are available. I can also reallocate resources. Every card can do it. The fact that this symbol is on every card is a reminder that a card can be played to reallocate resources, in which case I can simply move resources around from my storage area here to groundworks, that is to things in place. I can move them here. I can also, by using that action, get rid of things that maybe I don't need and they're cluttering my storage area. Another thing that I can do is to use this symbol on a card, and most cards have that symbol. Use that symbol to rotate the pagoda and to collect resources. So this is really cool, and this is really, again, probably the coolest thing in the game. When you play a card for that action, as you can see, it will show you a specific section. Maybe it's the top, maybe the bottom, maybe the second from the top. There's a section that is outlined, that is emphasized by being printed in black. Also, the grayed out on top are a reminder that when you play that card for that symbol, you must rotate that section. In this case, I must rotate the second from the top. And as you rotate, the reminder is all the ones above it rotate with it. For example, that is what I could do for that card. I could also, by spending that card, I could also have done that by spending that card for that icon. After you turn them, then you collect resources in the direction of the arrow next to the symbol you're using. For example, here, collect all available resources from top to bottom and place them in available slots in my storage area. I cannot skip anything. I have to collect what's available in that order if I can until this is filled up, and at that point I have to stop collecting. So for example, if I wanted to collect water right now with this move that I just did, I wouldn't be able, because I collect, even if this thing is empty, I collect 3 grass, 1 rock, and I'm done. That's why maybe, remember that was the position, I want to collect that water there. Then by using this card, I do like this. And now, instead of 3 grass and a rock, I'm collecting a grass, a water, and even 2 woods. So again, the tower is really not gimmicky because you need to optimize the position. I would say you spend more time trying to avoid things that you don't want than to really go for the ones that you want. Because, I don't know, like, there's a lot of wood there, but maybe I need to empty. There's not like rocks, it's hard to come by, but there may be stuff in the way depending on the direction of the arrows, because some arrows, they will go bottom up and some they will go top down. So this is the idea. You have 5 cards each turn. You take 3 actions by playing 3 cards, and those actions are, again, lay groundwork or rotate and collect, take a wild resource if the symbol allows you, or discard a card to reallocate tokens between your groundworks and your storage area. When you have all the necessary resources, these become sections of the garden. You can only have, again, no copies of the same section of the garden. That would be illegal. When you build a garden entirely, though, you will get an advantage. There is a token that you will collect, that you can collect, and those tokens that you collect for completing gardens, they have different effects. They may give you more points, they may give you extra areas here in your storage thingy. For example, I completed that garden there. With those 4 sections, and again, as you can see, what I was saying earlier, it doesn't look like the panorama always match from card to card, which is a small nitpick, but I'm gonna pick that nit because, again, you expect panorama cards to blend in more naturally. These symbols, when you complete a panorama card, you collect the symbol of the card that you just completed, but then you also get to score again symbols in the same garden. So for example, when I play that card there, I immediately get an advancement on that track there. And suppose that later I build this other card. You don't have to build them in order. You can rearrange them later if you need to sneak in a section of the card. But first I build that one and I get an advancement here. When I add another section to that garden, I score the one that I just placed, plus the ones that are there. So by placing that one, I get a purple and a red/pink. That's why working on these big ones, on the big ones here, means that it's going to be a while before you collect the tile for completing the garden, and you may never collect it, but it means that you also have a good engine and you get to score here. So there are different paths there, and depending on what you want to collect. Generally speaking, this is how you play for garden. You continue playing until the end of the game is triggered, which is when a certain number of landscape cards have been completed, and that number depends on the number of players. At that point, simply you score points, and from the numbers on the tracks here, from bonus tiles the players may have collected, and at the point the player with the highest total wins the game. I enjoyed For Garden. I played it only with 2 people and with 3 people, and those people being my daughters. I still don't have game night with adult friends. Should be soon. The end of the pandemic is in sight. But for now, I just played it with my youngest constituents. And it works very well. So it is a game that you can definitely play with younger players. The 8-year-old, the 10-year-old didn't have any problem understanding the mechanics. Planning ahead was easier for the 10-year-old than for the 8-year-old. But definitely if you're playing it with adult friends and you're a committed player, I mean, you're watching reviews of games online. So you love games, you're more than a casual gamer. And so this game definitely will be in the light category. Again, very light for us in the biz, in the hobby. in the category of Ticket to Ride. So family game, light game, almost like a filler, but with, I don't know, with a little more meat than just a filler. And that tower, again, on one hand, there is, it's nice to have it on the table. It's just so physically, visually impressive. Now, playing with 4 players, I think there will be at least one player who doesn't easily see the scoring board at all times. That has to look around a little bit. The fact that you do not have access to the tokens, that's not a problem. Somebody will act as the bank. But you really want to keep an eye on the board. So I'm just wondering, by playing with 4 players, which I haven't tried, if that may become a little bit annoying for the player that constantly has to check. Because being kicked out of the board is no fun. It's fun as part of the game, because then I'm going to try to kick somebody else out. I'm going to try to score a lot in other categories. But it's something that you really want to avoid. You really want to keep an eye on. To neglect to look at that because the tower is in the middle, I guess that may be annoying. But the tower, per se, it's a really nice game component. It's not just a gimmick. It's not decoration. Because really maximizing your chances of getting the wrong resources out of the way so you can get what you actually want within that such tight, small, claustrophobic storage area. That is very important. That truly is the heart of the game. Or is it? I would say it's one of the hearts of the game. It really has so many areas of interest that are all very simple, all very intuitive. Turn a section and collect up or down. Very simple. Put together those cards in the garden, avoiding duplicates. True, but maybe they have different scoring things by developing one card rather than another. Then I'm advancing on one track rather than another. And that can be very important because I'm committed to that area and you kick me out of that track. That wasn't very good. So maybe I want to do well in a lot of tracks. Meanwhile, however, somebody else is investing in a single track, trying to kick out other people. So which gardens you develop? Large garden, a lot of scoring. Small garden, bonus for completing the garden earlier. So that's a decision. Which gardens are you going to prioritize? Within a garden, which symbols are you going to prioritize? And then how the heck you get there because of the towers. All of these things are, again, simple and intuitive. They don't make the game hardcore, not even medium core. They remain simple, and yet they're not trivial, and yet they're entertaining. So I definitely enjoy Four Gardens. It's a light, simple fare, maybe even too light for some of you out there, but to play it with my daughters, to play it with casual gamers, I don't see there's any problem. When I go back to game night with my adult friends, I think from time to time as the second game of the night, I have an entire shelf for what I call the second game of the night. It needs to be games on that shelf are games that are simple, light, still entertaining, more than fillers from when we're exhausted from learning a hard new game, a game that I can easily pick from the shelf, doesn't take too long to set up. Even if I haven't played in a while, I can just browse the rules and figure it out again quickly. This is a game that meets all of those categories. For God is definitely an enjoyable game as a casual diversion, as the second game in your adult game night. It's beautiful. It's not gimmicky, if that is your worry, because it was mine a little bit, but I'm not worried about that anymore. It's entertaining, it looks great, so definitely a good game, definitely enjoyable, definitely an enjoyable game that I enjoy playing with my daughters, and I think I will enjoy with my adult friends also.